Thank you. Okay, we're just going to give it just another couple seconds here and we'll get started. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As all of you know, these meetings are recorded. They're also being live streamed. So keep it civil, and we appreciate the engagement of people, even though it's sometimes a little challenging when you know that you're on camera and people are listening to what you're saying and you're not familiar with that experience. But I can tell you that your voices matter. And we're deeply appreciative at the American Kratom Association. I thought we'd start off tonight with some big picture items that are going on here in the battle that we're seeing play out significantly here between natural kratom leaf and 7-hydroxymetrogenine and other chemically manipulated, synthesized or semi-synthesized opioids that call themselves 7-hydroxymetrogenine or 7-OH or pseudodoxil or MGM 15 and 16 products. These are all products that, despite the claims by the 7-OH people, where they say that they are not synthetic, the only way that you can get to the level of 7-OH that becomes a 7-OH majority or a dominant product, content of the products, is if you chemically manipulate it. And they can call it whatever they want. They can make whatever silly excuses they want. They are manipulating this product into a very powerful drug. And to the extent that there is any benefit, therapeutic benefits that are associated with that highly concentrated, highly potent substance, then they can go to the FDA. They can file a new drug application, because every time you listen, every single time you listen to the marketing materials or to the people that are testifying about 7-OH, it is all about the characterization of drug-seeking behavior, that they're seeking to have therapeutic benefits that are exclusively categorized under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act as drugs. I was in Bangkok, Thailand last week at an international kratom conference that was organized by the Thai government. And at that government meeting, they described how they have opened up human clinical trials on 7-OH in order to investigate whether or not 7-OH can be a therapy that is approved for a medicinal use because of its potency and power. That's what should happen in the United States today, to the extent that these 7-OH marketers are truly interested and committed to having a product that has beneficial therapeutic effects for their consumers. But of course they're not. This is a money grab by the 7-OH people. And if it were anything but, when they entered the marketplace in September of 2023, when they had an obligation under the federal law to have a reasonable basis of safety under the conditions of use, which means it's labeling, they had to have had scientific evidence about the safety of their product. They had to have at least some marketing experience for their products to have that reasonable basis for safety, and yet they had none. And that was confirmed by their chief science officer at a symposium that the American Kratom Association hosted in January of 2024, where Dr. Kampmeyer stood up and said that they did not have any science prior to market entry, that they were seeking to have science in 2025, which they now claim they have, but we've seen at least the remnants of the evidence that they're purporting to support their market entry, and it's anything but adequate in order to meet that standard. And then, of course, Dr. Kampmeyer said that they were hoping to have more robust evidence in 2026. Maybe, but to the extent that such evidence is forthcoming, it is all going to have to support a new drug application, because the HHS and the FDA are aggressively moving to meet that standard. And then, of course, Dr. Kampmeyer said that they were hoping to have more robust evidence in 2026. Maybe, But to the extent that such evidence is forthcoming, it is all going to have to support a new drug application because the HHS and the FDA are aggressively moving forward with the scheduling of 7-OH. While it has been disappointing for the delay in the DEA to have announced their scheduling of 7-OH at a Oval Office meeting this past week, where President Trump announced his addiction initiative, where he's trying to develop coordinated programs at the federal level that will address the addiction problem in America. Commissioner McCary stepped up and reported to the president that they are focused, the FDA is focused on eliminating 7-hydroxymetrogenine products, which are an opioid. And he turned to Attorney General Bondi and said, we're working with the Department of Justice to make sure that these products are scheduled and removed from access for the American people. I think that that's a significant move forward. I will also tell you at the Bangkok conference, it was reported to me by the Minister of Justice that they have identified 4 7-OH manufacturing facilities in the country of Thailand, which have now been shut down, and they're on the hunt for more that reportedly are set up there, some by China and some by US manufacturers, in order to capture a global marketplace, knowing that the US marketplace is going to dry up. That kind of behavior by people that are ostensibly trying to help people, that's what they say, ostensibly trying to provide a safe product, that's what they say. That is certainly not the kind of behavior when you know that the regulatory structure requires, even globally, for there to be a similar kind of condition for market entry that exists here in the United States. It is appalling that we're in this situation today, and to hear the absurd claims that are being made by the 7-OH proponents, who continue to say things like kratom and 7-OH are the same. They say that repeatedly. In testimony before the California legislature, Michelle Ross, who purports to be this expert for the 7-OHMS people and the 7-HOPE Alliance group and the Heart Group, testified that these are really the same things, and that in fact kratom, natural kratom, has 7-hydroxymetrogenine. That is a true statement. But what she doesn't say, and what she alludes to and rides on the back of the fact that there are natural occurring trace amounts of 7-OH, is that she wants legislators to believe that there is all this 7-OH that's in a natural kratom product, and therefore there is no difference. She doesn't tell these legislators that what we do is that we apply very strong chlorine chemicals akin to what, and this is the description made by Vince Sanders, as one of the big manufacturers of 7-OH, the same kind of chemicals you use to shock your backyard pool. And at the end of the day, they have a product that they develop, which is majority 7-OH, which is highly potent, which meets your opioid receptors. And this is the interesting argument that Ms. Ross tries to make. She says that, and she's explaining this to legislators, that when your body takes the metrogenine or it converts it into 7-OH. Again, a true statement. But then the lies start, and the lie is very simple. She says, oh, it's the same thing because your body is already metabolizing through the liver, metrogenine the 7-OH, then it's the same thing. Well, it's not. When you take a majority chemically manipulated product of 7-hydroxymetrogenine and you ingest it, and it goes and hits the liver, it hits the liver like a freight train. It's like a sledgehammer as opposed to a light tap on the liver when you look at the corresponding effects that comes from the ingestion of kratom through your gastrointestinal system and through a highly concentrated 7-OH product. But it gets better. The legislators in California were told by 7-OH proponents that they are no longer marketing these highly dangerous sublingual products, both in the terms of sublingual strips and chewable, dissolvable tablets in your mouth. Now, the reason that they are formulated that way and why they are now the predominant product formulation for 7-OH in the marketplace today is because it hits you harder and faster, because when it dissolves in your mouth, it avoids the first pass metabolism that goes to the liver. It goes to your bloodstream and it hits those mu opioid receptors immediately. You get a very fast euphoric high and then it drops off. And when you crash, you crave it more. And that's why you get addicted to 7-OH products that are chemically manipulated so quickly. And for the 7-OH crowd to try to act like they're innocent babes in the woods, that they're just doing the right thing for the American consumers, it is absurd. And then Ms. Ross tries to make the argument that, oh, 7-OH is just a market competition product turf war. That's absurd. In 2019, the American Kratom Association advocated for, in its first Kratom Consumer Protection Act, a limitation on 7-OH. Now, we had no idea that they were going to plan out this masterful intrusion into the marketplace by chemically manipulated in the powerful concentrated forms that they are today. We only knew that 7-OH that was anything above 2% of the overall alkaloid fraction of the plant was chemically synthesized. And we knew that that highly concentrated product should not be on the market. And we had a similar restriction on extracts. We said that if you have an extract product that is manufactured that doesn't use FDA-approved food-grade solvents, which are USP 467, that's the technical limitation on it, then you had a dangerously formulated product because it concentrated metrogenine. After you isolate metrogenine and then you concentrate it by using these impermissible solvents, you create a similarly dangerous product. We did that in 2019. We saw ahead that we were protecting consumers from many of these people in the marketplace that are acting irresponsibly. And here we are. In 2026, you now have an industry that's on their backs because they have duped American consumers, leading people to believe that they were consuming a kratom product when in fact it is a highly concentrated opioid, as described by FDA Commissioner McCary, with all of the attendant dangers of opioids in terms of addiction liability and in the respiratory suppression that occurs from it. And to hear the 7-OH people, they'll say, oh, there's no evidence that can demonstrate that it was 7-OH that did it. It's probably just metrogenine as well. And they point to databases like the FAERS database with the FDA. Now, there are multiple disclaimers before you can get into the FAERS database, all of which says that they're basically uncorroborated reports that are not examined. The only reason that the FAERS database exists is for there to be an identification of a cluster of adverse events associated with some product. And when that cluster is identified, the FDA then does an investigation and makes a decision. Does anyone in America believe that if there were a cluster of adverse events associated with kratom alone, that there wouldn't have been firm action by the FDA in order to remove kratom from the marketplace and to renew their scheduling recommendations based on this so-called quality data? There is no such thing in the FDA FAERS database that would allow for any evaluation of 7-OH products to be deemed as being safe. And the idea that the 7-OH people make, or the argument they make, is that, oh, there's no adverse events reported, there's no deaths that are associated with it. And here's the truth about that. At a presentation that was made last year at the University of Florida's International Kratom Conference, I think that was, or symposium, I think that was their 5th last year, and the upcoming one next month is, or this month is the 6th of those. But the representative from the largest forensic toxicology firm in America, NMS Labs, made a presentation where he said the problem with post-mortem investigations of deaths that involve kratom compounds is that when the autopsy is done, any 7-OH that might have contributed to or caused the death of someone, the 7-OH would have washed out because it is so unstable. It would not be present in the bloodstream in a toxicological screen. There would be, because all 7-OH products contain a trace amount of metrogenine, there would be metrogenine because metrogenine is stable, does test for toxicological screens. And this individual said, my worry is that some of these coroners and medical examiners will see in a death where kratom is present, even at low levels, that they'll blame kratom being the cause of the death because 7-OH in its instability simply doesn't exist in that tox screen. This is an incredible problem that we have here, and the experts are concerned about it as well, because what they're interested in is finding the truth. They want to know. Now, that doesn't filter down in many cases to the coroners and to the medical examiners. We have seen example after example after example of so-called claims of deaths related to kratom when in fact they had nothing but other substances, polydrug use, that accounted for the real deaths, and only because of the detection of kratom in the bloodstream of a decedent is that then the opportunity for a medical examiner, coroner, to make a determination that it was a kratom intoxication death. It is not scientifically valid. It is not produced by a consistent post-mortem investigation technique. It does not follow the rigorous standards that are set by the associations that govern such things. These are Wild West conclusions drawn by a medical examiner coroner who's attended some webinar or heard about kratom in some fashion in a way to say, well, I'm going to call that kratom because it was simply detected. And we've all seen specific examples of where that has been the case. It is a tragic outcome when the truth eludes us because you have professionals that simply get lazy about the way that they are doing evaluations, particularly with postmortem deaths along the way. And then, of course, contributing to all of this are those families that have deaths where the medical examiner and coroner has falsely concluded that metrogeny was the cause of that death. All of you know about the circumstance in Ohio where a mother courageously stood up and she argued against the conclusion of a coroner, in this case, two coroners, and she asked if we could help, and we ended up assisting in a lawsuit that challenged what the coroners had concluded because of the very low levels of metrogeny, which the mother had told the investigators from the coroner's office had saved her son's life from a life of addiction where he surely would have overdosed to a life where he was able to have a job, to be able to socially interact with his friends and his family, and actually was a productive citizen, where before he was zonked out. And she pled with them and they said, no, we've seen the kratom. There was 256 nanograms per milliliter in the bloodstream of that decedent, which even NMS Labs, which is no friend of kratom, said that that is a very low level. And when they were subpoenaed for their records, they responded by saying, we would want no parts of this lawsuit. We would not have called this a kratom death. The levels are too low. We don't think that kratom contributed to it. And when asked for additional data about the other drugs that were present in the decedent's bloodstream, they said, we don't know because the coroners didn't ask us to test for anything but kratom. And when we went back to the coroner's office and said, we'd like to take the blood sample, which the state of Ohio requires to be retained for a year, and in the 6th month, they had destroyed it when they knew that we were chasing them under these provisions. And it tells you how deceptive, dishonest these kinds of processes can be in delivering a result. And so you have many families out there who are encouraged in many cases by these trial attorneys that are looking for cases that they can force settlements because it's too expensive to go to trial, and they're just looking for a payday, and they convince these families that they can secure a good payday for the family, when it's true that if it's polydrug use, which the FDA and NIDA says that those are, when kratom deaths occur, they're rare, and when they do occur, it's because of polydrug use or adulterated products. And how can they go and sue some drug dealer on the street? They can't. And so they look for a pocket to sue, encouraged by this unscrupulous trial bar that is looking for class action suits in some way to cash in on what is obviously not a rigorously tested industry on the part of these medical examiners and coroners. It's a tragic state with families being misled. These families believe it, by the way. I've spoken to many of them. I understand that they believe that that's the case. But when we do the testing, when the autopsies are examined by outside independent experts, it falls apart. And that's why you haven't seen a spate of settlements. You haven't seen a spate of actual judgments gone to trial at all. And the only ones you have seen where you had irresponsible marketing by products that never should have been on the market, that are not kratom products, but rather adulterated and dangerously chemically manipulated products. You don't see kratom actual trials and findings being held up at trial in those particular cases. And yet these lawyers are incessant in coming back and making the argument over and over and over again in terms of they are. My heart goes out to any family that has a loss like this. But to blame kratom simply because there's an organization funded by trial attorneys of grieving families that want to make the case, and it makes them feel better when they really should be given the truth. And maybe the truth isn't very good. Maybe the truth is it's hard to swallow. Maybe the truth is that when it's an adulterated product, that's the adequacy of it. Maybe it's because of poly drug use. That's the hard truth to swallow. They don't want to hear it. And whenever you ask them to demonstrate with evidence and data in the form of an autopsy, they get all offended and say, oh, that's your go-to. You're just trying to make us feel bad. You're trying to make us prove the negative. No, we simply want to know the truth. And if you want to make yourself a public warrior and you want to argue, then you expose yourself to the facts. And evidence and data should matter at that point. If you want privacy, then have that privacy, and understanding that there is a clear responsibility when you make a claim that is challengeable based on the evidence and data that's available to us now, then you have to stand up for that truth. That's my bully pulpit statement for now. I can tell you that these are complex problems that we continue, but here's the problem, the bigger problem. It gets replicated over and over again. And when you have a state legislator who, sitting at a hearing, maybe hasn't done much research, sees a kratom bill pop up, and they go into Google, and the worst possible place to go for anything about kratom is Google. And here's why. Google has an algorithm where they have suppressed any pro-kratom advocacy statements from anyone. It's blocked from being there. Meta and Google and YouTube, they're all working on this because they have determined that kratom has been classified by the DA as a drug of concern. They will allow for anyone who blames kratom, because the difference in the minds of these social media platforms is that if you're an advocate for kratom, then you're trying to sell or promote an illegal drug. But if you're criticizing kratom, if you're publishing, even if it's untrue evidence and data, then they don't care, because you are fighting against the sale or promotion of an illegal drug. And so it is a system that has completely been turned on its head. It is an unfair system, and it is the worst place in the world to go for good evidence and data. Now, how do we fight back? In the state of Ohio is a primary example where you have the Board of Pharmacy, who, at the direction of Governor DeWine, was ordered to open up an emergency scheduling on 7-hydroxymetrogene. Fine, we welcome that. There's good evidence and data that's available through the FDA, where they have, with recent evidence, determined that 7-OH is a full-blown opioid, and they describe in specific detail as to why it should be scheduled. But then Governor DeWine, acting at the behest of one of these families, lost a loved one, blaming kratom, who then offered for regular rulemaking on metrogene. And we're going through that process right now. Dr. Jack Henningfield conducted an 8-factor analysis. That is a very detailed scientific analysis of the evidence and data that would support the decision, in this case, for the decision to schedule metrogene. And what Jack did in his analysis, and it is a 250 plus page analysis, extremely detailed, with all of the current evidence and data, funded in large part by the National Institutes on Drug Abuse, which undermines completely the claims made by the Department of Pharmacy chief pharmacist when she made the presentation to the Ohio Board of Pharmacy. I'll take a moment to point out one thing. When that chief pharmacist had concluded her presentation, it is a board that's been appointed by the governor and maybe some legislative initiative of people that are experts. These are people that are critical thinkers. These are people who are charged with the responsibility of protecting Ohio citizens. And so you would think that after a fairly complex 45-minute presentation by the chief pharmacist, that there would have been a plethora of questions that were being asked, because they would have been interested in and curious about, and specifically have experience and research experience to ask at least something about the presentation. At the end of the presentation, when questions were called for, everyone sat mute, and they immediately rubber stamped the decision. Not a single question. That's called a kangaroo court. That's not called a scientific analysis. And it is impossible for 8 independent experts for there not to be at least one question, or in fact, multiple or dozens of questions that should have been available to question exactly the complexity of the material that had been presented. It just shows you that they're on this rocket sled on rails in order to ban metrogene in the state of Ohio. And Jack Henningfield conducted a detailed, thorough, complete scientific review for the Board of Pharmacy of why the 7-OH scheduling recommendation was appropriate, but the natural kratom leaf analysis was invalid. We hope that they will listen. There's some steps that are left to that in the state of Ohio. They had a hearing today in the state of Ohio about the 7-OH ban, and they're proceeding appropriately going forward with that. And they seem to acknowledge there was a carve out, at least in the 7-OH side, about natural kratom leaf products with trace amounts of 7-OH in them, which of course is a welcome position, but it doesn't approach yet the actual metrogene rule, regular rulemaking that the governor has initiated. So we continue to fight that battle. The unfortunate outcome of all of this misinformation that is being generated by the 7-OH community, added by the confusion, frankly, of the announcement made on July 29th, 2025 by HHS Secretary Kennedy and FDA Commissioner McCary about the 7-OH scheduling recommendation. And that has been bastardized, misinterpreted, and misstated by the media throughout the country as being conflating everything into kratom. And so today we fight a battle at the federal and at the state and local levels about what the accurate story is and what the proper characterization of these kratom-like compounds should be. And we're seeing that evidenced by local county health departments trying to ban kratom, all the way up to state health departments like in California, Minnesota, New Jersey, and other states that are doing the same thing, relying solely upon the language that is currently contained in the FDA and Kratom webpage, where it explicitly states that there is no approved use for any dietary ingredient, dietary supplement, or any other use of kratom. All of it's deemed to be adulterated. And that language is not consistent with the science. It's not consistent with the current FDA position expressed by Commissioner McCary, and it needs to be modified and changed in a way that reflects the alignment to the scientific evidence and data that's available, and they have yet to do it. We know that they're working on it, but government's slow. But the outcomes are out there in the states where you see this misimpression and outright bastardization of this language being used to justify regulatory actions, which the feds should be concerned about being misused in that fashion. But we see it all over the place. So we fight the battle. We see this in state legislative sessions where many kratom bans are being proposed and acted upon. I was in Utah earlier today where a state senator there by the name of Mike McKell has gone on a crusade to ban all kratom. He claims that you can't tell the difference between kratom and 7-OH. He recognizes there are some people that are benefiting from kratom, but because you can't tell the difference, then we have to ban it all and let it sort itself out. He doesn't care that he criminalizes those people that he simply throws off to the side as benefiting from the use of natural kratom leaf products. He doesn't recognize that there is responsible adult behavior that citizens can and should have the freedom to exercise when they buy a kratom product. He says everything has to be thrown out. When we try to talk to him, he refuses to speak to us. He attacks former Senator Kurt Bramble, the state of Utah, who sponsored the first KCPA. He attacks everybody in the AKA organization, including our chairman, Matt Salmon, who went to Utah to speak to them. He doesn't care. When I tried to initiate a conversation, he refuses. We did meet and successfully convinced a member of the state Senate in Utah to offer a substitute bill to State Senator McKell's bill, which would allow for the structure that is statutorily in place in the state of Utah, initiated some 20 years ago, where there is a controlled substance advisory committee comprised of more than a dozen experts appointed by the governor and the legislature and agencies within state government that would be able to make a fair and unbiased review. And they do so every year, but Senator McKell bypassed them and didn't want to listen to him. Instead, he chose to deal in anecdotes and misstatement of facts, to the extent that he was telling the House Interim Committee back in November, when he was promoting his bill, that the FDA dose finding study that was a human study on the safety of kratom was funded by industry. That was nonsense. He knew it was nonsense, but to dramatically make his point after he made the statement during the committee hearing, he then held up his phone at the end of the hearing, and as though that gave him more credibility. And he said, I have checked and I've emailed the question from Representative Chevet that I've confirmed that it was funded by industry. Who was he confirming it with? The KDA? Because it was a lie. It wasn't true. And yet he made it sound as though it were the gospel truth. He then went on KSL radio and said to the listening audience there that the Mayo Clinic's done some really good research on kratom. The Mayo Clinic hasn't spent a single penny on kratom research. They merely restate what the FDA says about kratom, and they currently have outdated and inaccurate statements by the FDA. They haven't updated their website to talk about Commissioner McCary's position on natural kratom leaf products. They simply are paid. They have a contract from the FDA to republish health advisory information that's initiated by and supported by the FDA website. It is a tragic circumstance that we're in right now that this kind of behavior goes on, and yet Senator McKell doesn't have any problem with it. This is just one of the tragic outcomes of a process that doesn't hold people accountable. But we are doing just that. We're making them accountable. And when you stay silent, that is where the trouble comes in. We desperately need today every advocate, however fatigued you might be, however lulled to sleep you might be in the current situation of thinking, oh, it always seems to work out. We are under duress. We need to dig our foxholes, populate those foxholes with good warriors, and we need to make sure that we are fighting back with good evidence and data, with the voices of consumers that depend upon the availability of kratom products that are properly formulated, properly labeled, and age restricted. And when we get to that situation, we have a safe marketplace that's available to responsible use of kratom. At the Thai conference, I love the fact that their presentation was about responsible kratom regulation, because that's the key word. Responsible manufacturers, responsible consumers. And that's the important part of what we're doing. We've got a lot of challenges here in the next couple of days. I'm here in Boise, Idaho for a what they call a whiteboard discussion with the House and Senate caucuses about kratom. We have a hearing in Arizona on Wednesday. And then we have hearings in Richmond, Virginia on Thursday. Tomorrow we have an LA hearing. Now, the LA hearing is not going to be a final vote decision. It's going to be a decision to have the staff do a study, probably 30 to 60 days. But we've been acting out a strategy plan where we think we're headed in the right direction with the LA County Health Department. We're in a war with the California Department of Public Health because they continue to rely upon the FDA and Kratom webpage, and we're working actively with the legislature. There is an informational hearing that is scheduled for February 18th in California, which we will be able to fight back against this narrative that's being pushed by the 70H crowd, and we'll get our voices heard. And we have a KCPA sponsored by Assemblywoman Baines, who's a medical doctor, that's continuing to move forward. And there's a couple of other California bills that are moving. But we see every day new ban bills pop up. We have to fight back. We need the voices of kratom consumers to fight back and help us, however difficult it might be, however tedious it might seem to be. These are important things. In a hearing last week in the state of Georgia, we heard from the anti-kratom people, including the trial attorneys who have captured Representative Townsend, who is the advocate for kratom. And he's a good-hearted guy. I think he believes in his heart that he's doing the right thing, but he's being materially misled by a group of trial attorneys who only want things to align with their trial strategies and not for protecting consumers. And we have a counter strategy and a counter proposal that really does protect consumers. And we're going to continue to strengthen the enforcement capability in the state of Georgia for a KCPA. So we're working hard in those areas. In the state of Connecticut, we have the opportunity to have an amendment legislatively in order to correct the mistake that was made by the Department of Consumer Protection that went too far and banned all kratom when it should have just banned 70H. So we're working on that. We have hearings coming up in the state of Massachusetts, in the state of New Jersey, the state of New York. We've got hearings coming up in North and South Dakota. South Dakota has a ban. We have the ongoing battle in Florida, which is now working through the system where the AG's rule that he put into place on an emergency basis is now being prosecuted. And I think we're doing well down there. We'd like to tweak that rule a little bit from the current too restrictive 400 parts per million by dry weight to a high number. But in the state of Arizona, we have a hearing on Wednesday that will do exactly that. They'll look at a much more appropriate number in order to allow for kratom products to be sold safely, because that 400 parts per million by dry weight is just too low. We have bills coming up in Kentucky where this is going to be a clash of titans there. We've got ban bills out there. We've got ban bills just filed in the state of Illinois. We beat back one in South Dakota. We've got others in North Dakota. We've got others coming up in South Dakota. Iowa is a big problem. We're going to need advocates to be speaking up. They need to be doing it right now, telling the Iowa legislature they need to protect natural kratom leaf products. I spoke with a Iowa representative yesterday who told me that she's getting inundated with the kratom danger awareness. What she characterized as just a standard email that they're sending. We need your stories, your personal stories being conveyed to those legislators in those states. We've got big challenges that we're fighting, and we desperately need your help along the way. There's probably lots more I can tell you, but I'm going to go to the questions here and see if we can start addressing some of the things that you have on your mind here, if I can get to it. Let's see. Okay. Rob says, unfortunately, New York is moving a bill fast, banning all kratom drinks, which would effectively close our kava bar and other bars' doors. But can we advocate against this? Yes, you can, and you need to, and we just need to fight back. It's surprising that people can step up. Rob goes on to say, our cohort and us have already emailed local lawmakers and decision makers are seeing if we can get a bigger outreach from AKA. Thank you. We do this. We need your help, obviously. We need a coordinated strategy for the distribution of advocacy materials so that everyone that walks into your kratom bar knows that they're under threat, knows what they need to do. We have a landing page for the states. We'll make sure that you get that information. It's very important. Jennifer says, can you please give us the latest info and any updates on what's going on in Tennessee? Esther, and I've forgotten her last name, Hilton something, is hell-bent to ban kratom, and we're fighting back hard. We've got sponsors that are working on the KCPA with some amendments, and those will be filed shortly, and we're actually working on all of that. Gary asked, who is behind 70H? Easy answer. They're a group of manufacturers in this country that are always looking for an opportunity. And that opportunity can come in any way. Spice was an example. Any easy way to enter a marketplace, make a quick buck, and get out. We need to stop that. Gary goes on to say, it seems to look like they're trying to bring all kratom under the title of integrative medicine because the allopathic model is failing, and they know that kratom is currently the bridge for many failures of this medicine. Absolutely. They're wanting to ride the backs of the credibility of the kratom industry, and they continue to do that. They fight hard against it. It's just a mess. Jeff talks about what's happening in Virginia. There's a hearing coming up on Thursday, Wednesday and Thursday, so we need help in Virginia too. Melissa asked, I was curious if the AK will be helping in Iowa. They're aggressively trying to make kratom Schedule 1 in Iowa. We have a ban hearing tomorrow at 3 p.m. We're working with the Global Kratom Coalition and the Botanics for Better Health and Wellness. And we're allocating resources around the country because these are huge expenses for lobbying. The Botanics for Better Health and Wellness has a lobbying group on the ground. We have an advocacy outreach that we're working and coordinating with them. We need your voices heard, so look for the AKA updates, and we'll be helping there. Jeff asked, will you be at either of the Virginia hearings? Yes, I'll be there on the 5th. Bob Durkin is going to be there on both Wednesday and Thursday of this week. And so our voices are going to be there. But even if it's not us, there are going to be other advocates we're coordinating with from these other groups. Is Missouri still semi-neutral about regulation? From Erica. No, Erica, that you have some that want to ban kratom, including the health department there. We're trying to work through those things and trying to get a coordinated effort in Missouri. I think we're going to prevail there, but it's a big battle, and it's a state where we shouldn't be having the fight. But Missouri is where one of the leading 708 manufacturers is located, Vince Sanders, and his storyline is so incorrect. It's laughable, but yet he can say it and with some credibility, and he puts a lot of money behind it. And money buys votes, unfortunately, in those situations. So there you have it. Jeff asked about a 7OH test. You can now detect 7OH. There are a variety of tests that can be done for it. The University of Florida has developed a very cost-effective testing mechanism that makes available to the states for their crime labs so that they can identify where it's banned, and then they can also identify where it's present in a product. Adam asked, thanks for the meeting. Is there any way to get any type of support or intervention directly from FDA or HHS with all these ban bills in the states and localities? We are trying to get the FDA and Kratom webpage changed, and that will have a dramatic account for a dramatic reversal. We're also asking for Commissioner McCary to make a public statement because the bureaucracy is too slow in moving on it. So we're working on this every day as we go forward. If the DEA were to schedule 7OH, that would help us along the way as well. Mike asked, how many lawmakers are compromised because they get money from entities who benefit from being criminalized? A big farm, big alcohol, those are trying to patent 7OH. There's a lot of corruption in the political system for money. If you look at the 7OH proponents making contributions to Republican PACs and lawmakers in the state of Florida, it is astounding. Nearly $1 million from one company. That tells you the problem we have. And the only thing we have to fight back against that are the voices of our constituents along the way. Illinois refiled the KCPA, Marcus Evans and Curtis Tarver. It's great. Unfortunately, Senator Castro filed a ban bill today, and we've actually worked with her in the past. So hopefully we can reignite the that relationship and get that corrected. We are working with the Botanical Advocacy, Education, and all of these groups. And I'll just say this: I welcome every voice to the table. I know that and I made this comment directly to one of the board members of a new group that's supposedly an education group where they're trying to advocate for it. And I can tell you that there's nothing wrong with their intervening. There is something horribly wrong when the way that they advocate for collecting new advocates is to badmouth the AKA, because some of the organizers of that group were previously affiliated with us, and the program just didn't work the way it was being implemented. Whether they were at fault or not isn't the issue. It was so divisive that we got multiple complaints all the time because people were being excluded because they didn't like each other. And we don't play romper room tactics when it comes to advocacy. So it's very disappointing that that kind of thing happens. And I was blunt with the board member. And of course, she said, oh, that's not me. That's not me. Well, yeah, it's not you, but you're now affiliated with a group that is actively out telling people, oh, well, the AK is bad, and therefore you should come join our organization. Stand up for yourselves, show a quality program, be a good advocate, and stop bad-mouthing other people in the industry, and then maybe we'd have something to talk about. Adam says, just for clarification, Ohio, I think I'm still a bit confused. Was this a victory? They said kratom would not be included, right? Well, it's a small victory in that the original language of the 7OH did not account for the trace amounts of 7OH that exist in all kratom products. So the ban on 7OH does allow for those trace amounts. So in that sense, it's a victory, but it's not something that intellectually is valid because they're still hell-bent to ban kratom as well. Micah says, can compromised lawmakers be exposed by way of ethics commission complaints? Maybe. Slow process. They got a myriad of excuses they can make. The fellow legislators overseeing that, just a hard way to do it. Gary talks about Senator McKell and in terms of his motivations behind it. His motivations are pretty transparent and not good along the way, in our opinion. Is there Lloyd asked, anything I need to worry about in South Dakota? Kratom has helped me so much. There's in every state where there's a potential Kratom bill, we need to watch it, worry about it, nurture it, make sure that it says the right things. That includes stopping bans, but also bills can be amended at any point in the process. So we have to take all of these bills seriously as we go forward. Ryan asked, does the FDA have any written evidence of where the FDA has agreed to update the FDA website with correct information? Ryan, that's not the way they work. We've had numerous conversations from multiple parties with the HHS Secretary's office, with the FDA Commissioner's office, and with the White House, and all have said in unanimity that the FDA is working on it. The current problem, according to our sources, is that the FDA career staff with the attorneys are afraid that the language that we have proposed is too favorable to kratom and will make it appear as though the FDA is endorsing natural leaf kratom products. That is an easy fix. They can put disclaimers in there and it can easily be addressed that way. This is a shill argument that they're making because the career staff doesn't like kratom on it. Lloyd asked, what's the sudden push against kratom? All the confusion with 7-OH exploited by the anti-kratom forces. Ryan said, can you provide some more details about the strategy in Georgia? So at the hearing in Georgia that was held last week, there was no committee vote. We have been working with the Department of Agriculture to set up a regulatory framework that will allow them to enforce the law without there being a huge fiscal impact on them. We're very close to an agreement on that issue. That will be a major step forward for the Department of Ag to step up and say that they will, in fact, enforce the KCPA. That is one of the complaints that Representative Townsend has made. Now, I don't find his objections to the fact that there is no enforcement very credible because in our last KCPA, we had specific enforcement mechanisms and he rejected them. And when he was asked specifically by the Senate committee member, well, how are you going to enforce your bill? Matt Wetherington, the trial attorney, went up and whispered in his ear to tell him the answer because he was completely befuddled by it, the question. And the answer was, we'll let local law enforcement do it, which he had castigated in a previous hearing over in the House. That's why I think they need to get their story straight. I'm not very, frankly, I'm not very supportive of the narrative that's being discussed by Representative Townsend. But like I say, I think he's a good guy with a good heart, and I think he's just being misled, and hopefully we can bring him back into the fold. Misty said, can you give Jennifer Martin a shout out, please? She was the only advocate who showed up in Georgia. Thank you. I am glad to do so. Thank you to every advocate. Every time they stand up, they tell their story, and they effectively get the message across because it makes a huge difference. I think that when Bob Durkin was speaking, he's got a tremendous reservoir of information. He is an expert at every level, but he needed an advocate like Jennifer to stand up. And Jennifer is the latest of the consumers who have stood up. Misty herself is a champion. We've got a team of people that support us that we're very grateful for, and we don't say it enough because there aren't enough opportunities to say it. But I'm telling you that when you look at the various podcasts that Misty and her group puts out to educate people, when they speak up at these hearings, it makes an enormous difference as we go forward. So thank you to all of the advocates who make the sacrifice and the effort in order to move forward. Michael says, how can one help in South Dakota? You can send an email to our office and Stephanie Taylor, and we'll make sure you get on the list so that you're informed and what you'll know when those hearings are. It's staylor@americankratom.org. John said, you said the FDA has extensive evidence that 7-OH is a dangerous opioid. Leaving aside animal studies, non-oral dosing, literature summaries, and anecdotal reports, what real-world human evidence shows clinically significant respiratory depression or overdose risk from 7-OH as actually used by consumers? John, you are an advocate for 7-OH. I get it. You can read, I hope, the 7-OH report that is on the FDA and 7-OH website. Go read it and then come back with a credible question like this and say, what about this? And I'll give you an example. There are people who criticize Chris McCurdy's work in this area because he administered intravenously a 7-OH product. And the question was not how the 7-OH product was being used in terms of saying intravenous isn't the way people use it. It's the effect it has on the mu opioid receptors, and it doesn't matter one bit how it got into the bloodstream. The question is what its effects are. And I'll tell you, John, you should ask the 7-OH manufacturers, and I don't know if you're one of them, why they're relying on these sublingual products that goes directly to the bloodstream to induce a euphoric high quickly. And you can explain to me why Narcan will intervene to help people that are overdosing on 7-OH, where that doesn't occur with metrogeny because of the different pharmacological action. John, you show me that, and you be man enough to step up and say, here's the evidence. And you explain to me why the chief science officer of the heart group, Dr. Kampmeyer, stood before a group and said there was no scientific evidence. And now you want to come back here and argue to me that somehow, well, what is the extensive evidence that 7-OH is a dangerous opioid? Well, I'll tell you, Commissioner McCary's not going to stand in the Oval Office and call it a dangerous opioid if it weren't true. I'll tell you he won't, because he in himself has the credibility. And I will tell you that the FDA is not going to put up the evidence and data that's on their website, but for the fact that they've done it. And I will tell you that when the DEA schedules 7-OH, which I believe they will do, then you're going to sit there and say, oh, well, I bought the Kool-Aid from the 7-OH industry for a product that is nothing more than a new drug without a new drug application. It is an opioid. It's opioid effects, not opioid-like. It is an opioid itself. So now I've given you the response. Up to you, my friend, to come up with the evidence. Don't ask me a silly question like that when the evidence is there for you to read and you refuse to read it. You buy the Kool-Aid and you drink it and you absorb it. And God love you if you take too much of it, because you will be one of those overdose deaths along the way if you're not careful. Nick says, what is the status of AB 1088 in California? What is the next steps for that bill and timeline? There will be an informational hearing on February 18th that will be the catalyst for action of both the Umberg bill in California and the AB 1088, which is Assemblywoman Bain's bill. The 1088 passed the Assembly with no negative votes, so we're looking forward to working on that. Kim asked, is there something happening in Arizona? There is a hearing on Wednesday. There's no public comments, I don't think, that are being accepted, but we're making a presentation on it. It's the first round of hearings that will be held before the House Judiciary Committee. I believe that I'll be attending that hearing, and I think it starts at 10 a.m. That morning. Maybe it's 9 a.m. Patrick asked, what are the key talking points we discuss with legislators when we meet with them or talk with them? Great question, Patrick. We have material on our website, protectkratom.org, that will give you that information. If it's not sufficient, email us, please, and we'll make sure that we backfill on it. Andrea asked, does AK have a model bill I can see for consumer protection on kratom, for example, being on the offense, not defense? We do. We have a model KCPA. We have a couple of versions of it. One is the full regulatory scheme, which some state legislators will do, and then there's a low burden one that, and we'll be glad to send both of those if you just send us an email, but they essentially allow for less of a fiscal impact with regulatory control along the way. Micah says, don't forget Tennessee. Hilton Haynes gets her money from Big Pharma. I agree. But more importantly, she's motivated by a family that's making the claim that their child was killed by natural kratom leaf. We do not see the proof of that. And until we do, we're not going to be on board with that. And we certainly have not seen any evidence that natural kratom leaf causes an overdose along the way. Rob with Roots Kava Bar, thank you. Yes, we'll be keep asking our regulars if any chance we could get outreach on the news, on a news flyer that would be game-changing awareness for our state. Appreciate your taking the time. Yeah, great idea. We can work on that, and we'll do that. Thank you very much. Lloyd asked, what can I do here in South Dakota? Again, email us and we'll make sure you get put on this. Laura Romney says, Iowa has 2 ban bills. There was no KCPA bill to offset these. Are there plans to get one introduced? Yes, we're in the process of identifying a sponsor. These are tough problems in Iowa. We just need to defeat the bans first. Paul asked, in the new bill in West Virginia, it's a ban bill. There are other West Virginia bills, you're correct. We have a lobbyist on the ground in West Virginia. We're working hard on these. We don't think many of them will make it out. Edie says, when you say you need advocates. Does this mean if I'm an only resident of a particular state, or can I address every state and email my testimony? Edie, you can do every state. We want to help you as if you're the only advocate in your state, and I think there are actually people you just don't know they are advocates. We all should work together on these things, and we'll make this work. But thank you for that clarification, and we'll work hard to get it done. Nicholas says, does the KDA comprise of many parents who supposedly have loved ones passed away due to mitragynine? Is this done to prevent the stigma of their stepdaughter dying from a son or daughter, an actual drug overdose? Part of this, in my opinion, is that parents listen to a medical examiner coroner that tells them that their son or daughter died, or their wife or husband died of a kratom overdose. That's misinformed. They picked this up from some webinar that they've listened to. It's untrue, and I think they're well intentioned, but they weaponize their grief, and there's the ones I have problems with. They weaponize their grief, and they don't want to be accountable. They say, "Oh, this happened," but they won't show the proof. When we have seen these advocates who claim to be true, and I'll give you an example in the state of New Jersey, the CJ's law, if you look at the autopsy, which is publicly available of CJ, you know that it wasn't natural kratom leaf, and the mother admits it. But she motivates legislators to say, well, kratom was a part of it, and she only focuses on kratom. The loss of a son or daughter is awful, and none of us want to be in that position. You want to find who's responsible. And unfortunately, there are coroners and medical examiners out there that don't give a damn about the truth. And they look for the convenient thing. They've heard it on a webinar. They go on and Google it. It's crazy, but that's what happens. And that's why I think that we have to, in as sensitive a way as possible, we need to look at it. But the KDA people said, oh, don't demand our autopsies. You're just trying to shift the burden. They complain that we call them names. I was called a murderer by one of the KDA members. A murderer. She believed it, but it doesn't make it true. And that's the kind of thing that goes on. And they're not innocent by any stretch of the imagination. And it's incredible the way that they behave, that they get to hide behind their grief and not be accountable for the truth along the way. Gary says, how can I get involved in Georgia? I'm a certified naturopath that has seen what the powdered extract is capable of, and I want to see people educated properly on how it can benefit them. Gary, email us. My email, do it to Stephanie, staylor@americankratom.org. We need your voice. Your expertise and your credentials is critically important. So let's definitely connect, and we're going to come chasing you if you don't. So we'll find you. So please do that. That's great. Jordan Richard asked about the 1088. I've already talked about that. Thank you, Jordan, for all the work you do, for the documentary you're doing, all the advocates that you're finding. We are going to need the work being done with your 600 advocates in California. Absolutely, we need that. And you can text me about Thailand. It was a fascinating experience over there. Misty said, since they've changed their rule in Ohio for the wording to include opioid, do you think it would be potentially banned further down the road, or was it today a win for kratom? Only, my opinion, haven't seen all of the documentation yet. It was only a small win for us there for the clarification about 7-OH in trace amounts not being there. But they did clearly focus, as I understand it, that they were not going after the natural occurring 7-OH levels. Erica says, how's Kansas feeling about kratom? At risk in Kansas, watching it closely, need help there when we start to get the reports back from legislative action. Nick says, LA County sent letters to retailers at the beginning of the year, sending criminal threat letters for selling kratom products. Do you have any insight on this? We're working with a team of attorneys. We're working with our lobbyists there. LA County is just channeling behind the California Department of Public Health. The California Department of Public Health is wrong. They're relying solely on the FDA and kratom website, and they're extending it and extrapolating it to the Sherman Act law in the California, which gives them control over food establishments. We think they're wrong. We're going to keep fighting that. Any movement on the KCPA in Pennsylvania? I saw a new bill pop up in the past week and two for banning exclusively 7-OH. That's good news, and that's coming from our lobbying efforts there. We're trying to educate legislators about the distinction. We're hoping that we can move the KCPA this year. Nick says, do you have more details in the LA County situation? Do you have insight on how the situation may go? We know that in LA County that it's likely they're just going to call for a staff report to be done within 30 to 60 days. That's going to be the input that we provide to them, and we have our experts already weighing in. So I think that that will be helpful to us. Erica says, so we're expecting ban in Missouri too. Sorry, last question. Well, yeah, there'll be a ban, but we have more inertia behind a KCPA. Michael says, how can I help in New Jersey? Sign up with us. We need as many advocates showing up at the next go round of hearings in the state of New Jersey. Kyle says, I'm a resident in Utah. Can you recommend what emails, calls I can make, and what points I can hammer home to my reps? Kyle, you got to do it quick. I will have the support staff reach out to you again to give you direction on that. We've got a fabulous social media campaign that everybody should go and look at that we're running in Utah, and we would want you to send that link to those videos that we're doing for social media to every one of your reps, senators, state senators, and state legislators. Let me see if I can find the link real quick. We can put it in the chat board here, but I think I can pull up the actual link and tell it to you. So the Utah it's utahkratomfacts.org, utahkratomfacts.org. Let's see. Zoom user asking if you heard anything new in California. I think I already covered that. Jordan asked, so if the bill in California passes and all this craziness goes away, does the health department still have the power to go rogue even if the legislation passes? A state regulatory agency can cause mischief anytime, but if the bill passes, it clearly establishes the right of manufacturers to market kratom products under the regulatory scheme outlined in the bill, and they would have a hard time coming around and getting us on that. Is it risky for the person filing the Ethics Commission sworn complaint? Well, it's only risky if you say something that's not true. But if you can have documented facts in it that you filed that complaint, you're going to be fine along the way. Glenn Scheib says, I watch these mothers testify, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind they're coached, and what they say is exactly the terminology used. Why can't one of us push back and ask them to show it on their autopsy or blood work? You're right. You look like you're not sympathetic, but they will respond by saying, what an awful person you are. Why can't you just accept the fact? Why do you need this kind of proof? You're demonizing my kid. And nothing wrong with challenging them. I think that just understand the blowback will come. Andrew says, what can I do to help get a Consumer Protection Act passed in Ohio? Sign up for us, Andrew, because the same answer here, we're working hard in this. Brian Patrick Kennedy comments, I think we can happily say that in Rhode Island, kratom becomes legal on April 1st, 2026, and is the first banned state to overturn a longstanding ban and legal KCPA. Brian Patrick Kennedy is the state representative in the state of Rhode Island who is singularly responsible for being the catalyst to overturn a ban. And it was his courageous fight against the bureaucracy, against the governor of the state over a period of a couple of years that allowed us to have a victory that is unparalleled in the experience we've had across the states in the United States. The first state that enacted a ban incorrectly back in 2015, and it's now overturned effective this year. And we love it. It is absolutely fabulous that his efforts led to that, and he assembled a team of fellow legislators that really made a difference. And we are all in Representative Kennedy's debt for the absolutely fantastic effort that he made on behalf of every kratom consumer in America, because it is singularly the most significant legislative action that's been taken in the kratom space since 2016. Misty says, email your name, city, and state to laura@plantsandherbals.org. Absolutely right, Misty. Laura is leading the effort with a lot of these efforts. Micah says, can we sue YouTube for suppression? Anybody can sue anybody. The problem is they're very expensive lawsuits and protracted over years. It just hasn't been a strategy that we can afford because we need to spend money in the states with lobbying efforts and all this. Stella says, do I need to stock up on kratom? Well, it depends on where you live and what the imminent threat is. So there you have it. Now, John wants to get back into this. And John Vaughn, you're a 7-OH advocate. I get it. You have the right to be. Go find Go on the 7OH webinars and go ahead and do whatever you're going to do. But I'm going to entertain your comment once again. We heard the same argument for years about kratom itself, and the AK was right to demand data, not deference, repeating trusted experts say so. Now is a reversal of that standard. The question is simple. Is there human evidence of real-world overdose and mortality risk from 7OH under typical use? Animal studies, receptor activity, Knox-alone reversibility, and precautionary claims are not substitutes for that. If 7OH poses a lethal threat, then there should be documented human deaths attributable to it, especially after millions of doses. There are none. Replacing evidence with fear and urgency is exactly how kratom ended up here. John, you're wrong. And you're wrong at a fundamental level. Because as I've explained to you, the pharmacology of 7OH is vastly different than kratom. When kratom goes through your metabolism, your first pass metabolism system, it goes through your stomach, it goes to your liver, and that's where the trace amounts of 7OH get created as a metabolite in that process. 7OH doesn't do that. It used to when it first got put in, you went through that first pass metabolism, but that wasn't fast enough for you guys. You needed that euphoric high. I stood before multiple vendors at the Champ Show in Las Vegas and went one after another and said, what's the difference between kratom and 7OH? And the answer was consistent. One person said, it'll knock you on your ass. I've never met a kratom vendor that said, my kratom will knock you on your ass. But the 7OH people are proud of it. Look at your marketing. I purchased sublingual strips, which the 7OH manufacturers say they're not manufacturing anymore, when they testified to legislators or when they talk to legislators and said, we don't sell those products anymore. They will say anything they have in order to get by from the truth. And the truth is that 7OH is vastly different. It is chemically manipulated. And you tell me, John, how you can justify the allowance of a product formulation on the marketplace that bypasses your metabolism, goes right to the bloodstream, attaches to the opioid receptors, gives you that fast euphoric high. Tell me one 7OH person that says, hey, I just take it as a replacement for a cup of coffee because it gives me an energy boost. A third of the 24 million people in America do it for that reason. Tell me a 7OH person that says, I just do it because I want to feel better. I want to have this little mood elevation. A third of the 24 million people in America do it for that reason. Show me one 7OH consumer that says that. No, they say it because, man, I need to feel like I'm getting high. I need to feel like I'm overcoming this acute pain. They go, now some kratom people do that. No question about it, but the receptor activity is significantly different. And to your question, you asked me about specific things. I'm not going to waste everyone's time other than to say you are categorically wrong, John. You need to wake up and you need to go to the FDA and 7OH website, and you absolutely need to go and read what they say and what the evidence is and the documentation they're submitting to the DEA. You can fight me all day long, but your fight isn't with me, because your fight is with the DEA and your fight is with the FDA. Now, you are absolutely correct. For years, the bureaucrats at the FDA had a bias against kratom. It started in 2009 when you had 9 deaths in Sweden in a 12-month period that were attributed to a kratom product. What happened in 2009 was the catalyst for this anti-kratom group at the FDA, career employees that were going to continue to fight against kratom being available. But they are the same people that fought Orrin Hatch when in 1994, he passed the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act because the FDA was out in the public saying that dietary supplements were killing people. That's what they were saying. And they said, we've got to ban them and we've got to go to new drug applications, knowing that that gave the FDA this enormous control over a segment of products in the marketplace along the way. But here's the difference. The difference between a dietary and botanical supplement that was under the radar of or on the radar of the FDA was that they weren't killing people. They had no demonstrable evidence of that fact. They looked and tried hard to do it, but they couldn't prove it. And here we are today in 2026, and we have a product based on its pharmacological action, which has this unique attachment to the opioid receptors in the brain, which has a demonstrable impact that is reversible in naloxone, and that's in the data. Don't take it from me, go read it. And why waste your time coming to pick a fight with me? Because you need to be picking a fight with the right people here who are making claims that you claim are not true. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your expertise is. I don't know how long you've been in this battle, but I know it hasn't been longer than September of 2026, or I'm sorry, 2023, when the 708 people decided to go to the market without the evidence and data that's required under federal law, and they violated federal law. And John, that's who you're supporting. Never did the natural kratom leaf people come to the marketplace that way. They had centuries of safe use. We had evidence and data supporting that. And I have heard the arguments from the 708 people that there are a billion doses of 708 administered, and there is no evidence of there being any deaths. That is nonsense. They point to the FAERS database, and I've explained to you why that's bad. They point to the fact that you can't find the evidence from autopsies because it washes out. And I've explained to you by an expert who explained the process that 7OH is so unstable, it is gone. And the only thing they can find is a very low level of trace levels of metrogenine. And listen to this, trace levels of metrogenine in a 7OH product, as opposed to the naturally occurring kratom products, which have trace amounts of 7OH. If I took a 20-ounce glass, typical serving size for beverages in the United States, and I put 1 ounce of milk in it, and then I put 19 ounces of Everclear 190 proof, and the person consuming that had seizures and died, would we call that a death by milk? Of course not. We would call it an Everclear death. And when you take 7OH in a highly concentrated, chemically manipulated form, using, I'm sorry, Vince Sanders said it right, pull shock chemicals in order to catalyze it. Stunning. And I hear Jeff Smith, who's a nice fellow, representing the Heart Group, sit before the Kentucky legislature and say, oh, it's a little bit like oranges. Vitamin C occurs in oranges, and all we're doing is taking a 25 oranges and we're squeezing it down and we're creating a vitamin C pill. No, you're taking 7OH, which doesn't exist at that level. It would take 100 pounds of kratom to develop a dose of 7OH the way that they're describing it. They take and chemically manipulate it, they shock it with high concentrations of chlorine, and they develop a product from that, and they want to say it's a naturally occurring catalyzation process. I'm sorry, that just defies common sense. So John, pack it in. Go back and look at objectively what's happening, and don't try to draw these fake parallels between the way kratom came on the market, natural kratom leaf products, and 7OH. So I hope that we're done with your nonsense. And I hope that you will have at least some sense of awareness that there needs to be an accurate accounting for what 7OH really does. I'm sorry if I've offended you, but those are the facts, and you need to come and get a grip on all of this. Glenn Shipe says, one of the attorneys that donated millions of dollars says it might have violated board violations. Why has no one called them on the board? Well, he's denied that he gave them the money. The Kratom Danger Awareness says they haven't given the money. Who knows how that happened, but that's what they say. Deborah says, I'm in Tennessee. How can I help? I'm available to go to Nashville as needed. Deborah, thank you. We need you there. Again, staylor@americankratom.org. Let's sign you up. Stella Buchanan says, so Trump is against kratom? No, I don't. I've never personally heard the president talk about it, but I'm telling you that he was in the Oval Office last week when he was signing his addiction initiative, where he's fighting back against these dangerous drugs. And FDA Commissioner McCary stepped up and said, we're going after these 7OH products, these chemically manipulated opioids. So that's all I know about it. And certainly you have HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who stood up on July 29th, 2025 in a press conference, unprecedented, when you have the HHS Secretary and the FDA Commissioner asking for the scheduling of a substance. That was done. And then to hear Commissioner McCary go on the national news networks and say, we're not focused on natural leaf kratom, we're focused on these dangerous opioids, 7OH. Stella says, North Carolina, we're working on it. We need your help there, no question. There's representatives on X talking crap about Rhode Island overturning their ban. Let them. It's overturned. And they can cry all they want about it. But you had an agency in state government that recommended the scheduling of kratom in 2015 at the behest of the FDA. And we had the two successive, the directors of the Department of Health say that Kratom didn't meet the scheduling criteria, never should have been done. And that's why Representative Kennedy, in his courageous action, was able to fix that problem. Kyle says, thank you for answering my question. I've sent the UtahKratomFacts.org to my representative and senator. Great. Every person in Utah should do that. Everyone who is talking to people in Utah should do that. Michael says, tell me who I should contact in Illinois, my district rep, state rep, and KCPM ban, all ban bill sponsors. Absolutely. Coordinate that, if you will, with S. Taylor at AmericanKratom.org. She'll work with Misty and with Laura Romney on this. Misty says the 7OHs are having their webinar this week. Go join and stay out of ours. We are all on Kratom. Thank you, Misty. Hey, it's okay. If they want to be on this, they're gonna hear the truth. They won't hear the truth, I don't think, in my opinion, on the 7OH webinar. I have heard their misstatements. I've heard their glossing over the facts. I've heard their nonsensical descriptions from so-called experts like Melissa Ross. I mean, unbelievable. And yet they'll say it as though it's the gospel truth, and it's just unfortunate. We're entitled to our opinions, but not our own facts. And unfortunately, they try to make up those facts. Stella says this is all big pharma. Fair point. And I think there's a credible basis for that. Gary says, why can't the supply line for 7OH producers be cut off? Perhaps we can pacify at the federal level. Well, they actually are, where they identify them, they are shutting them down, but they pop up everywhere. They don't care about standards. This is just a tough problem for us, and I think the federal government's committed to shut them down, as are many state AGs. Jordan asked, didn't RFK step in Ohio last year when the governor wanted to ban Kratom? Why isn't he doing it this time? He tried his best with Governor DeWine. He talked to him twice. There's only so many times you can talk to someone who's just pig-headed. And in this case, I think that the Secretary of HHS calling the governor of Ohio twice on this issue is evidence of a pretty strong commitment. And we hope that he continues to be diligent in this effort moving forward. I think that's the last of the questions. Thank you to everyone. We kept you a long time. I can tell you that the advocates, some of whom are on here tonight, are invaluable to our effort. You see people like Laura Romney and Heidi Segura and Misty Brown and Jennifer Gillis, and that list goes on and on and on. I can tell you, these are magnificent people who stand up and they tell stories that are incredible. They're heartfelt, they're true. And to see this undermined by a group of companies who, in my opinion, are just in it for the buck, and they'll be gone as soon as the scheduling takes place. It's frustrating right now that we don't have speedier action on the scheduling front. I'm hoping that when Commissioner McCary called out in front of the Attorney General 7OH, that there will be an acceleration to scheduling, but they want to do it right, so it can't be challenged. And so to credit them for that, I just wish they would do it more quickly along the way. So very, very grateful to everyone who's joined this call. Again, we've recorded it. We are looking forward to engaging with you over and over again. Tough battles ahead of us, and we got the next couple of months that are going to be particularly intense, because many state legislators are only in session for the first 4 to 6 months of the year. And so we're going to see a lot of activity. So